To be looking at Rollbit, the long awaited video, I believe, because as of recent, Rollbit has been on a huge tear. Unless you've been living under a rock, it's jumped from 2 cents to upwards of 12 cents at its peak. Right now, it is experiencing a little bit of a pullback. So in today's video, we're going to be covering Rollbit, the platform, its fundamentals, and a little bit of technical analysis, right? Whether it's a good project for you to jump in. But before we get started, guys, quick disclaimer. Rollbit is not available to any US members, including me, right? That's why I'm having to jump onto rollbot.com. So if you're somebody that's in the US, you're not technically allowed to be on this platform. So do not use this video as an incentive or as me giving permission for you to jump in there. This is simply going to be for educational purposes only, all right? First things first, let's take a look at Rollbit's. We're going to look at it from a fundamental standpoint, and we're going to look at its market cap. As of now, it's only sitting at around $228 million, which may or may not sound super high depending on some of you, how experienced you are with crypto. But in my experience, anything under $1 billion is usually a good sign, especially given the hype right now behind Rollbit. I do think this has a chance to potentially eventually reach over $1 billion. So where it's currently sitting, that still has legs to reach about 4 to even upwards of 5 times its money back. As of now, there is about a 24-hour volume of $12.6 million. And where you're going to find the bulk of that is actually going to be on Uniswap. So if we head on over to Uniswap and you press on the wrapped Ether, right? So it's going to be on the wrapped Ethereum pair, and then you just simply type in Rollbit. It should be the first one that pops up right there. You may or may not get a pop-up that says, you understand the, essentially the consequences of investing into something like Rollbit because it is not available in the US. You have to accept it, of course, and then you can from there trade your wrapped Ethereum to Rollbit. But another way to also confirm whether that's the right contract is by heading on back over to CoinMarketCap onto Rollbit's page and simply copying this Ethereum contract over and then just pasting that into the little address bar here. And once you enter that in, eventually you will just be prompted with this right here. You can just tap on that if you want to, or just exit out, and it should be right there basically. So that's how you were able to trade Rollbit, especially if you're wanting to go through that DEX route, right? Decentralized exchange route rather than a normal centralized exchange, which as of now, I believe there's not really a lot of options outside of Uniswap. The only ones I'm seeing here are like Orca, Radium, and Open Ocean, which I'm not familiar with at all, right? So your best bet is probably going to be going towards Uniswap. Or if you are outside of the US and you're available, to have access to Rollbit, I do believe you actually can buy directly from their website, which again, if I press on this, it's going to ask me to make an account, which I can't, but I'm going to be prompted with something like this, right? Where it's going to say it's not available in your country, you'll be redirected back to rollbot.com. So essentially, I can't do that, right? I'm access restricted from that as it is. So with that said, now that we've covered briefly its fundamentals here, and given that it's CoinMarketCap, I actually want to talk about its total supply. So one of the huge incentives that Rollbit has to offer, I'm confusing Rollbit with Rollbot, so you might hear me saying those back and forth, but one of the huge incentives that Rollbit has to offer is that it's a deflationary token. Total supply right now is currently 3.2 billion Rollbits, but what they actually do is that every 16 hours, Rollbit generates an average of 16,000 prizes to lottery stakers, which you can actually stake down here where it says Rollbit lottery, and there's other ways you can actually stake right here. So it says stake NFTs, cash for prizes. Again, you have a general idea what that looks like here. Obviously myself, I can't bet, but for those of you that can, you can see how this would look like. But Rollbit offers to where, of course, you're giving out prizes, but every piece of that action is then burned and making it a deflationary token. And by deflationary, what that usually means is that because there's going to be less and less of Rollbits, that means that the market cap will actually end up going up higher because the value of each individual token would technically go up as well. So if you're holding, let's say, 1,000 Rollbit, and eventually they burned 20% of that, that means that it should, in theory, go up 20% of its value, right? That's usually how that works. It makes up for it. That's such a bad example, but you get the idea, right? So now let's head on over to Rollbit. I mean, obviously, we already had a glimpse of it, but now I want to really talk about the actual platform itself. Like I mentioned before, I'll keep honing on this. I don't have access to Rollbit, and neither do any members of the US. This is not a shill video. This is just simply talking about why it's so hyped right now, right? Everybody's on this and why it's done such crazy price action. So looking at it from its UI standpoint, already, I think they've done a good job of implementing this in a way it grabs your attention, right? You see the big, bright buttons. It makes you curious. You want to click around with all the graphics and the NFTs. And on top of that, I mean, something that we're all familiar with, right? The idea of a casino, staking, and chance to win, right? It's something that humans, I think, are naturally just gravitated towards. The reason I say that is because when you look at something like Yoda, which has nothing to do with Rollbit whatsoever, but I'm just going to use this as an example, is a high yield savings account. And what they've done is that you either have the chance to earn, I believe, like 4% on your money for yield, or for you to have the possibility to win every single week up to $1 million. This was actually a startup company that started, I believe, like 2 or 3 years ago now. And because of the lottery system, they actually have expanded like crazy. And I think just innately humans liked the idea of possibly winning big, right? Rather than maybe compounding your money over time. So Rollbit obviously took that, not from them directly, but more so just the idea that you have the chance to win big through staking to push their platform forward. I think that's actually garnered them a lot of attention. But going back to its UI again, because it is such a bright and airy UI, I think that it makes it very clear for people to understand like what's going on and makes them curious. I'm actually the developer for BecauseBitcoin, and one of the things that we try to do was kind of that exactly, right? That's why the buttons here are really big for the signups. We try to make the photos just nice and gravitating towards every user, so that they go in there and they're wanting to click around and actually read the articles and whatnot. So I'm not saying we're a casino whatsoever. That's not what BecauseBitcoin is, but more so just looking at the UI alone. That's what I've noticed Rollbit did really well, was that they simply implemented features here that make it gravitating towards the everyday user. So now let's take a look at the actual platform itself. So from what I'm seeing here, I don't have access to the platform, so we're actually going to jump over to this article that gives us a little bit more insights onto the casino and whatnot. So one of the biggest things that Rollbit has to offer, of course, is lots of games. One of those being sports betting. I believe right now it's at 35 games individual. Some of those being, let's take a look at the list here. From what I'm seeing, it's tennis, table tennis, soccer, football. I believe it's football. Could be soccer, right? And even esports games like CSGO, right? Counter-Strike, Diablo 2, and a few others, which I'm personally huge into esports gaming. I don't like follow it one-to-one, but I do like that. So the fact that they offer that is already a huge incentive for a lot of people, considering that I think that most people involved in crypto are usually involved in stuff like that, right? Esports and gaming or whatnot. So on top of that, sports betting and the casino, they do offer one other big incentive. That is the Rollbit NFTs. So they actually create unique NFTs to boost rewards to individual users on the Rollbit casino and their trading platform, which we'll talk about here in a sec. Each Rollbit NFT has different traits and rarities, and that determines the utility and benefits of owning it, right? So some of those benefits can be lottery stakes, multipliers, revenue shares. One of their names to fame with their NFT was that 2,000 robots were sold in less than 25 seconds of their NFT pre-sale, right? So already there's a lot of huge demand there for these NFTs. And then on top of that, they can be traded either on the proprietary, if you can call it that, proprietary NFT platform, right? Which there's a little button here I saw. So right here, you can either trade some NFTs or directly on OpenSea, which is a huge NFT platform, right? So you can see right here, there's a quick little preview of their current NFT platform. Looks like they've changed it a little bit. Oh, wait, never mind. Here's how it is, right? So you can buy, you can bet on it. And so there's a lot of incentives there for you to own an NFT that's strictly for Rollbit, right? So right now they're going with this robotic theme, seems like. That's kind of like their current scheme or whatever. Trading platform. Right now we have a little like GIF screen capture of how to access it, right? There's going to be a little tab where it says trading, and then you should just be able to leverage up to 1,000x, which is absolute degeneracy, guys. I do not recommend this for actual trading. Again, this is just going back to the idea that Rollbit is, at the end of the day, a casino, right? You're going to lose money, and so use this. Again, this video is not shilling Rollbit. We're just going to simply talk about it as to why it's so hyped right now. And it's just absolute lunacy. I don't recommend anybody ever trading 1,000x of their money, because 9 times out of 10, I'd say 99.9 times out of 10, you're going to end up losing it, all of it. So make with that as you will. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. But they do offer that where it's 1,000% leverage. So if you have $1, that means you're having a buying power of $1,000. In theory, that's how that works. With that said, your liquidation zones, your liquidation is likely going to be like this, right? In other words, if it goes down even remotely a little bit, you're probably done for, right? Like you just lost that money. But the idea is because you can leverage up to 1,000, meaning you don't technically, or you're technically not going to put in a lot of money, right? In theory, right? Which you shouldn't. At the end of the day, you should not put a lot of your money into something like Rollbit. But there's a quick little overview here on how to place a bet. Essentially, you wager a certain amount of Rollbit tokens. You then have a multiplier. You either want to go up or down. So either long it or short it, which again, going back to the idea of bridging the gap between the user and the developers, Rollbit does such a great job of doing that. They don't use like terms like shorting or longing or leveraging. No, they just simply say up or down, just because that's something that we're all familiar with, which is not necessarily a good thing or bad thing, right? I just see that as like bridging the gap to a user, and which I think, in my opinion, has a lot to do as to why it's done so well in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, essentially that's just going to be a quick little overview of what they have to offer in terms of their trading platform, their NFT staking platform, which I don't know if we touched base on that, but essentially if you can also stake your NFTs on the platform itself, and I believe you earn dividends off that as well. So it says right here, stake NFTs and cash to win the jackpot, right? So if you stake your NFT, you then have a chance to win prizes, which again, going back, is a huge incentive as to I think why Rollbit's done such a great job of incorporating the average user onto their platform. But it's pretty straightforward, you know. It's at the end of the day just a casino, staking, leveraging, betting. I mean, that's all it is. And going back, I think, to price action, which we'll get into tactical analysis here. For me, what makes a good platform isn't just about having the latest and greatest tech. It's about having revenue, which, as we see, Rollbit's been around since the 2020, so it's going on for 2 to 3 years now, and they've generated lots of revenue because of their platform. It's easy to use, super easy to understand what it is, and obviously it feeds off of the average person's psychology, which is betting. If you win big, you're likely to return, and so you have this just this thing that I think a lot of people just gravitate towards naturally. I mean, I've gone to Vegas a couple of times and I have a good time there. I know I'm going to lose money, but it's a good time, and I think that's how it should be. And I think they treat it like such. They just treat it like something for you to have fun with. It's absolute degeneracy. I'm not shilling this project once again. And so because of that, it's done really good in terms of price action. And so here's what I personally foresee for Rollbit. Right now there's a little bit of a pullback, and that is, I think, in part because Bitcoin is also pushing back here. We did see that it did break out of this long-term wedge from back in late June to now. So literally during the entire time that Rollbit was going up, Bitcoin has just been consolidating. So now that there's a little bit of a pushback, it's technically down over 20% in the last 24 hours, which is, I guess, 10% now. But I don't think it's the end of it for Rollbit. I think that Rollbit, given that it has a low market cap, and right now there's still a lot of hype behind it, I would look to see towards areas of liquidity, and preferably that 50 cent to 45 cent range. So likely what I would like to see, not that's what's going to happen, I would like for it to possibly go down towards this area, possibly even break below it, right? So we get a little bit of a capitulation from this, and eventually we see a huge impulse move towards the upside, right? Because that's going to signify that there's a lot of demand here for Rollbit. And the reason I would like to see that in this area is because when we look at its coin market cap price action here, that 45 cent right here range up to its 50 cent range was where there was it was a previous zone for resistance. And the moment that Rollbit broke out of that, that's pretty much when it started having huge impulse moves towards the upside, right? Which you would call terminology here is leaving me, but essentially that's what I would like to look for in terms of for liquidity. With that said, can it break below that? Absolutely. And if it does, I don't think that would be a good sign, because if it does break below this general area of support, then it would probably end up going back to its floor price. And I'll move my screen over here so you guys can see the price. But essentially, that would put it back to that 2 cent range, which we talked about, which would not be ideal. Because once a certain level or a floor price is tapped a couple of times, eventually it ends up breaking. We saw that in the past with Bitcoin, right? Where we're talking way back when in like 2018 or whatever, when Bitcoin was at its $6,000 price range, which let me pull that up on the weekly actually. So let's do this right like this. Let's go way back when to 6,000. Back then, Bitcoin was ranging for the longest time at that $6,000 price range. And once it broke below that, it had a huge move towards the downside, and it pretty much slashed its price by half. Granted, it didn't take long for eventually it to push back upwards. It was around a 2-month period or so, 2-3 month period. And eventually it started going back up, and it more than surpassed it, going back up to 12,000 or whatever. Which I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Rollbit, but if it does end up hitting that 20 cent range, I would be a little skeptical of possibly going back in, just because that is going to break all of its current, structure. And if it does break that, then it's going to form a whole new one, basically. So at the time of this recording on July 24th, I am aiming towards that 45 to 50 cent range to possibly long it, right? Of course, I'll gauge the market and see how everything's doing. And be sure to go check out the market checks by the BecauseBitcoin members. They do a good job overviewing Bitcoin, futures, traditional markets like stocks, S&P 500s and whatnot, to have a good picture and correlation of everything that's going on. And so I think it's going to play a huge role in that as well, right? As to how this will perform in the next coming days or weeks. But for me, given where we're currently sitting, I think that would be a good price range to possibly look at. And then eventually, if it does, right, hypothetically, if it does end up holding here, then I do think that there could be a impulse move towards the upside. And either one, we'll just start climbing right back up, or two, I would look to see if there's going to be an extended consolidation period here, right, where we possibly see some lower highs, and eventually we bounce off these lows maybe once again, and then eventually that's when we end up breaking out to make new all-time highs, right? But given all the stuff we talked about, right, the casino, the fundamentals, its price action, I think that it has a good chance eventually doing that. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree or disagree with my current outlook with Rollbit? Are you guys even going to touch it? Because I know there's a lot of controversy behind it, given that it is I'm trying to make this bigger here, but given that it is a casino, a lot of people are against that. They're saying that it is gambling, which at the end of the day, for me, I really don't see that as a negative, right? Casinos at the end of the day are just a place for you to have fun. It can be degeneracy, but it's up to everyone's discrepancy to, do your own due diligence as to how much you're willing to lose. Realistically, it's no different than trading as it is. Obviously, with trading, there's a lot of measures. You can take in place for you to prevent future losses. With casinos, that's not the case, right? Whatever you're going to put in, you're likely going to lose. So it's really up to you to make those decisions. But like we mentioned, this is not available to anybody in the US. So do not take this video as me shilling the project, because I could get in trouble. 2, this is not financial advice, but that is something to just keep a note of, just so nobody gets on me for that. But if you enjoyed this video, guys, please be sure to like and subscribe for any future updates, or for you to take a look into any future cryptocurrency projects that you don't want to miss out. And with that said, I'll see you on the next one.